Um, yeah, so it's your first name is Cecy. No, Cecy.
Yes.
Ceci's the last one, right? That's good.
Yes.
Great. I'm good. Please forgive me.
No, it's okay.
And then I
Most
say,
people most people get it wrong.
okay. Your
And then my last name is Correa.
Korea. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, your patience is humbly uh, accepted and asked for. So cool. Well, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. And I just want to just kick it off and see um, where you are right now. Like, what is your what's your position right now for work, and what's your day to day like? What does that mean day to day? Like, just
Yeah.
yeah, kick it off.
Cool. So right now I work at Return Path. Specifically, I work for a product called Context.io, which is an API that lets you sort of like interface with email. So it kind of abstracts all of the weird protocols out there. Like right now, if you want to connect to an email account, you have to use really old protocols like IMAP and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we essentially created an API that just makes it easy for people to be able to interact with an email account instead of having to like do it with all these old protocols. We just have a very easy API that people can use. So part of what I do in my current position is help developers with their integration of Context.io. So I get to troubleshoot a lot of code and a lot of just like questions like, hey, why isn't this working? And it's like, oh, because I don't know, you're missed a param or something, stuff like that. I mean, it's pretty neat.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So it's a pretty cool idea. I like the idea because it is painful to deal with email and to be able to just have
Yeah.
an API just to reach out there. What type of I guess clients or like someone? Why would someone want to API with an email? I guess I understand it's really cool technology. I just what kind of examples, like generic
No,
examples?
yeah, I totally get it, and I actually think it's really interesting because a long time ago, email was kind of like the primary like way of communication, like for businesses and for people too. Like if it was digital, before texting and messaging became so prevalent, and then now with uh, it's almost like email is like a second class citizen, but there's still a lot of very rich data. So, for example, CRMs tend to really like us because you can get contact information, or you can manage like, okay, who did I email today? So from that perspective, CRMs tend to like Context.io a lot. But there's a lot of consumer apps that have been popping up recently that sort of deal with like purchases.
Mm-hmm.
So, like one of the apps that is built on Context.io, that's like one of the most successful people or apps is called Paribus. And essentially, you just hook it up to your email and it just listens for purchases. And then, if there's a price drop within the guarantee window, it'll apply for a refund automatically for you.
Oh, nice.
So then it literally just like gets you money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I feel like a lot of people don't realize that you can do with email data is like a lot of people use it. Like you pretty much have to use it if you're buying anything online. So there's a lot of data you can do with that. Um, Specifically, there's an app that I want to build. I just haven't had time to do it to manage like tickets that I buy. Because sometimes I'll buy like a ticket for a concert
Yeah.
and then I forget about it. Which I know, how do you forget about it? But sometimes it happens to me, and I'm like, oh crap, I bought Weird Al tickets. I
Yeah.
totally wasn't expecting that. So like, if there was an app that could connect to my email, and then like 2 weeks before the show, kind of
Right.
remind me, hey, don't forget you bought these tickets. Yeah, so kind of stuff like that.
Yeah. I love an app like that. That would just because sometimes they send you. Sometimes it'd be nice if like I buy tickets for an event and then I show up and like before I leave, like, oh, do I print them out? Is it will call? I don't know.
Yeah,
I forgot. It's been a while, so it's yeah. And with plus being Austin being live music capital of the
Yeah.
world, you can have access to a lot of shows. So I can see how, that app would be very, very useful in this town.
Sometimes I totally will see like someone's playing and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get tickets. And then I'm like in the heat of the moment, you're like, this is a great idea. And then you just completely forget about it. And then like it comes up and you're like, I don't really want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that ever happens to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's been some shows like, oh, I really want to go, and then the day comes like, it's raining out there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to stand for that.
Austinites hate rain.
Well, like, there's a story where like ACL got rained out and destroyed the lawn for ACL. Like
Oh
Ari.
yeah, and then Lionel Richie did like a private party.
Well, this is years before. Like, there's
Oh, okay.
Ari. What was that? Ari. ACL. The guy that destroyed the lawn for ACL.
Of the year that it got destroyed?
Yeah.
Gosh, I would want to say that's like 2010.
Yeah, 2010ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like 2010, like it got. They had just put new sod on, and then and then the rain came with all these people, and it just got wiped away. It was terrible. So it was awesome. It was awesome that way. Sorry. But yeah, we don't like rain that way. So okay.
Yeah.
But
If we liked rain, we lived in Portland.
we're the Sahara Desert of Portland. That's cool. So that's where you are now. Like, so when did you get into web stuff? Like when did you decide to?
Probably like I want to say like 2004.
2004. Okay.
So my brother, my older brother, is also a programmer, but he was a webmaster. He started coding when he was like 16, and he was a webmaster back when like being a webmaster was still like a title. Kind of like that title kind of went by the wayside, but he used to do that sort of thing. So I would watch him make websites and just be like, whoa, this is magic. And then once I got to college around 2004, I was a media major, and I started making cartoons. Like it's kind of a roundabout way, but I started like creating characters in Photoshop and then animating them in After Effects. And then Flash came along back when it was Macromedia Flash, and I started making animations that way, and then realized that you could also use it to make websites. And then all of a sudden, all of this new world popped up that I didn't even think about, and I started making websites in Flash. I'm so sorry. Please don't hate me.
Oh, no.
Yep, I was one of those people that was making really fancy buttons in Flash. And then after that, once you like get to the point where like you've done everything you can in Flash and you really need to learn some HTML because like there's some limitations to that, right? So then I started learning HTML and CSS, and that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay.
So in college, like even though I was a media major, like film, TV, radio, the first thing that I always did in all of my projects was like make a website for whatever it is that I was doing. So a little bit of new media and old media.
So what do you mean like what type of websites would you make? For what projects?
So like for example, here's a neat one. I took a Japanese New Wave class during film school, and for our final project, we needed to prove, look at a period of time and talk about how it is new, how it could be considered new wave, or influenced by the Japanese New Wave or French New Wave. And what I did was write a paper on how Monty Python's Flying Circus could be considered new wave because of all of the sort of like postmodernist stuff that they did on their show. And clearly, if you look at the timeline, you can definitely see like there's definitely some influence from like a lot of the stuff that the French New Wave people were doing, and like all how they handled the cuts and how they handled like all of the almost like dreamlike transitions from one skit to the next. So that's what I wrote a paper on. And instead of actually like writing a paper, because I felt like this is film theory. I need to be able to show you clips. And this is before YouTube was a thing. So I made an interactive paper. Like I made a web page for that and I embedded QuickTime videos. And again, this is before YouTube. So I was having to like rip the clips that I wanted from the DVD, encode it, and then host it somewhere and figure out like what's the best way to get someone to watch it. And I had to learn all about compression and like streaming versus not streaming video and all of that stuff. So that's one of the examples where like I kind of went all out and I was like, I'm not writing a paper. I'm gonna make this interactive little like web page.
Did anyone tell you to do like?
No.
Okay. All right.
I was like, can I do this? And my teacher was like, sure.
Yeah. Knock yourself out. Okay.
Yep. I don't think he thought I could do it.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Because you don't typically do that when you're a film major. At least at the time, it was still like, now you can, get a Tumblr page, you can get a WordPress page up. But, at that time, it wasn't even that long ago. But, if you wanted to get something up, you would probably have to code it yourself. Yeah, this was certainly before Tumblr was kind of a thing. So I think that's why it wasn't so like prevalent to be just like, I'll just put a website up.
Right.
So.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, because a lot of times, like a lot of people who were the first pioneers of like video, they didn't have a YouTube, so they just put on a web host. So I mean,
it was terrible back then.
well, it's something now. I'm not really sure what it is. I don't know, but I'm not sure it's great right now. But
yeah,
just big burn, big shade to all YouTubers out there. But anyway, but cool. So you're a film major, or you're a media major.
Yeah.
And so, what does media major in college like? So you just study film, or
yeah? So I went to the UT Radio TV Film program. So I was an RTF major, and you can sort of choose to specialize. You can specialize in film or TV or radio. I mostly did TV and film. So while I was in college, I pretty much tried to get my hands on any sort of internship that I could. So I interned with the Austin Film Festival. I volunteered for South by, building up their 35 millimeter prints back when they still had some like 35 millimeter stuff. I think now they're all digital. And I was a PA on like a Discovery Channel, one of those like monster moves shows where they move a house.
What was a
I was a
PA?
PA on that. Production assistant.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It just means pretty much like do whatever we tell you, and we'll pay you very little, but you get this, some filming under your belt. That was kind of excruciating. And then I was an intern at the Weinstein Company
Like?
during the. What was that?
How's that like?
It was very interesting. It actually made me to realize that I didn't want to be in that business. And that's not to throw shade at the Weinsteins at all. I actually, I'm a huge fan of them. But it kind of made me realize that like the film industry that like I loved so much was so behind. This wasn't like I was about to graduate in 2008. It was right in the middle of the writer's strike. I don't know if you recall, like all the writers were, on strike because they wanted to get more royalties for digital video. So they pretty much shut down a lot of the work.
Yeah.
So I was there during that time. And I remember, you might find this funny, I was there during, like, specifically to help cover all of the summer film festivals. And the first film festival was Cannes. And essentially what they wanted me to do is watch for all of the reviews coming out, because we would forward the good reviews, like what should we buy? We would forward those to Harvey Weinstein. And then we would also be looking for like the reception for the movies that we were there with. And when my boss was showing me how to do it, quote unquote, she had a browser window opened with a million tabs to all of these different news outlets. And I was like, you can subscribe via RSS and then you don't have to do this. And she was just like, what? Like, I just blew her mind. And I was like, this is easy. And then, like, this is what they would make me do. I would have to go to all of those news outlets, print out all of the articles, then scan them into a PDF that we would send to the executives. And we did this every day. And there were like hundreds of pages that we sent. It was so dumb.
I totally believe it. So
It was such a waste. And not only that, I had this like fantasy that like, oh, somewhere Harvey Weinstein is sitting on his like PDA or whatever he uses, in a robe, drinking some mimosa in like a rooftop and reading this like report that I put together. And then my boss was like, he doesn't have a phone. So, like, they were printing this out. They were printing him 150-page reports every day because he didn't have a phone, apparently, at that time. I don't know if that has changed. Not trying to throw shade. But I was like, I just can't believe, like, this was 2008. Like, how do you not get with the program?
yeah, but he's living the dream though, right? He doesn't
Oh,
have a smartphone.
absolutely.
He doesn't have to worry about it, right? So
He has, like, 3 assistants.
yeah, so he's just like. It's just like I have my own personal news editor going through getting the news I want to hear.
These are my apps, my assistants.
Yes, so there you go.
So it just kind of made me feel like, man, I really love technology, and this industry that I love so much is like so backwards right now, and just not embracing of technology at all. And all these writers are fighting because the industry doesn't understand how to even handle digital. And I think things have improved since, absolutely, but I think they still kind of don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like that goes to like, well, it's kind of hard for industries to change at the time. So yeah, but yeah, I remember that time because we have like, Joss Whedon couldn't get some projects done, so he did his own projects, and then I remember the Daily Show, all the writers left, and so it was like. Jon Stewart was left to his own devices, and Stephen Colbert was left to his own. Really, just bad TV. Just bad TV
Absolutely. No,
yeah.
I think Dr. Horrible came out of that.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Horrible. Yeah. Yep. And then we've been waiting for Dr. Horrible 2 ever since, and all these writers are working. It's just really terrible. Just terrible.
Well, there's a podcast I listen to called Script Notes with John August, and he was talking a little bit about how like they do like talk about like I don't know, like writers guild stuff, and they were going over like how much money they're making now out of residuals, and like apparently like they've actually seen like an increase for sure in like the digital residuals that they get. And
yeah, I didn't say like
it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, I'm not saying it wasn't worth it. I'm just saying that we probably won't see a sequel to Dr. Horrible until there's another strike, and so.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, we're probably due for one pretty soon.
Yeah. It is pretty interesting. I mean, just with YouTube and the news of this week, was some of the YouTubers got. I don't know if you read this one, but YouTubers were like got not cease and desist emails, but we're talking about the popular YouTubers, where they got emails saying that some of their videos will not be monetized because they weren't in line with advertisers' philosophies, not philosophies, but like YouTube's philosophies for advertisers. So if they say like something bad or they have a negative, not negative, but like harsh words is like, I don't want to say that, but just some sort of news or news take or hot take that wasn't in line with what YouTube considers advertiser friendly, that they're not going to be monetized anymore. And so
they're essentially censoring the content.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to censor it, but it's also YouTube's platform to do what they want, right?
Yeah.
So it's like they can get their own web host, right? So
yeah,
put YouTube up, but that's not where you're on YouTube for, right? You're up there for exposure. So
yeah.
But,
if you didn't want exposure, you'd be on Vimeo. Ayo.
Who's
Just
throwing
kidding.
shade now?
Just kidding. I love Vimeo.
Yeah, we love everyone equally. So, right. So, okay. So going through media major, you've interned for Weinstein's. Um, then I noticed in 2009 you're managing your you landed you're managing clients. Is that right?
Not quite in 2009. In 2009, my first job out of college was working at Electronic Arts.
Yeah, Electronic Arts. Sorry.
Most people were like, "Oh, EA Sports," and I would always have to be like, "They do other games,
Do they? Do they?
do they?"
Uh,
Yes.
so we're doing it at EA.
I pretty much like all of that stuff, even though I wasn't, a computer science major or anything like that. And especially at the time, there wasn't like a degree for web. But all the stuff that I was doing, making websites and all that stuff, kind of got me this like entry level job doing stuff on the EA support website. So I did everything under the sun, like do QA for games and figure out like what's broken and how to fix it, so I could write articles for the website to like tell people how to fix things. And I did like some graphic design for them. Sometimes they'd be like, oh, hey, we need a new. At that time, they had a portal for each different brand. So like the Sims would have their own support website, and Madden or whatever. Like they were all separated by brand. So I would like make mock-ups. Like I made so many mock-ups for like different portals that we would have for the different brands. And then like right before I left, they decided to consolidate everything. So all of those sites are like no longer out there. But yeah, I just kind of did so much stuff. And one of the things that kind of fell on my lap because it was like this social media thing was kind of new, and they were like, "Hey, you're kind of young and you're already on Twitter. Can you like manage our social media?" And I was like, "Sure." So then all of a sudden, I was a social media professional.
Oh, wow. So what type of accounts were in charge of for on Twitter?
I was in charge of Ask EA support. Um, and mostly what I did is tweet out like support articles, and if someone had an issue, then we would ask them to like submit a support ticket or like call in, because we couldn't really at the time. I don't know if it's changed, but at the time we couldn't really like do support over Twitter because it wasn't like tracked, and we wanted to track it.
Okay.
So it's pretty easy.
Pretty easy. And it sounds pretty nice because like you did a whole lot of different things too. Like I always have a fear of being bored. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. So
I mean, and then also in terms of just being an entry level job, it was great because it got me a lot of just experience.
so
And
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, like, I remember like right after I graduated, they like the RTF department apparently was like calling all the graduates and figuring out if they had jobs. And the person that was talking to me was like, "You have a job? Like, oh, I've been talking to all these graduates from RTF and they don't have jobs, and it makes me so sad." And I was like, "No, I'm employed. I'm just, not doing film." But and it's funny because like all of my bosses after that, for I don't know, the next like 3 jobs, all were also RTF majors that were working in tech. So we kind of bonded over that.
Oh, yeah. So how long were you at Electronic Arts?
I was there for a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I loved working there, and I loved the video game industry. Just I don't know. It feels good to be a part of something like that. But I don't know. At the time, for what I was doing, I was severely underpaid. So I kind of had to just go look for a better opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so where'd you go after that?
I got a marketing job at Dell as a result because a lot of what I was doing at EA was very relevant to what I ended up doing at Dell. So like at EA, I would write articles and then help a lot of the different like websites from different locales localize the content and then put it up online. So like Russia and Sweden and Brazil and Italy and all of those places would like localize the content I wrote, and I would sort of like help them put it up online and kind of like give it a thumbs up. So that kind of gave me like localization experience. And, Dell being a global brand, they really liked that. So I went on to work on their like marketing department, doing a lot of the stuff for like their global channel brand, the partner direct brand.
Cool.
It was like, whoa. Going from like working at EA to working at Dell, even though like, I don't know, probably EA has a lot more notoriety, like Dell was like just completely different, just corporate calls with like someone in Hong Kong and London and Geneva and Argentina and Mexico City and Round Rock.
Yeah. So how do you cope with that changes?
Uh, I don't know. I kind of started smoking at that time. No joke. Not great. Um, but yeah.
How very European. That's pretty nice.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I. It was a very interesting experience, and again, like I got a lot of experience just in a year. I did so much because it's like one of those things where like I was essentially hired to do 3 jobs, and it was just go 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 all the time. Um, but it kind of gave me a leg up on my next job, which was working on the agency side, because part of my job at Dell was managing agencies. Well, not managing the agency, but like managing a lot of the projects that we had with agencies. So I was like, oh, this is like a thing that I can do.
Yeah. So when you talk about managing agencies, what does that mean?
Like, for example, we had an agency of record, and then they would work on us on campaigns. So, for example, we had a campaign to sell, I don't know, latitudes for our, channel partners in whatever region, and they would sort of like take us through like the whole campaign life cycle. So like, here are the mock-ups for the website, and here's the copy, and here's the copy for the newsletter, and here's the mock-up for the newsletter, and do you approve? Yes. Or I have changes. Okay. Then they go and do that, and just kind of managing all of that and seeing it from like the beginning of the campaign to the end of the campaign, whenever we would like send out, if we sent out an email blast and then created a landing page, and then all of that stuff, just kind of managing that the work is getting done and that it's meeting our expectations.
Okay. Cool. So you're managing a lot of different agencies. Would you I guess you would handle a lot of different agencies for one campaign, or would you just handle
We got, yeah.
different agencies for different campaigns? Like, was it just
Yeah, we actually did. We had like an agency of record for like most of our digital stuff, and then we had an agency for like all of our email, and then we had a different agency for some of the other more like complicated stuff. Yeah, there was essentially an agency behind a lot of the different components of like what made our whole like ecosystem like run. So at one point I counted like 7 different agencies that I was sort of like working on a project with at any given time.
wow? That's a lot of agencies.
It's very Mad Men.
A lot of phone calls, a lot of email.
Oh God, I was on calls all the time.
Yeah. I understand that. Cool. And so you decided to, like, how long were you at Dell then?
A year.
A year, okay. And then you decided to do what?
I decided to go the agency route. And this is not to throw shade at anybody, but I was like, man, like, I'm a little bit,
Sorry, excuse me.
I'm well versed in tech. I can speak that language. I want to work at a digital agency so that I can be a good communicator between like the developers and the designers and the client. Because I felt sometimes like I was sort of managing expectations with the agencies and with my boss. So I was like, from the client side, I was managing expectations on both ends, and I was always kind of having to like play translator and explain why certain things, explain to my boss on the client side, like why this couldn't be done, and then explain to the agency why it needs to be done, or like whatever. So I was kind of this translator person, and I felt like, oh, maybe I can have a good impact if I go and do this on the agency side, so that I can do a good job setting client expectations and make my team happy. Like, I don't know, that's kind of what I set out to do, and I started working at Springbox, which is a digital agency here in town, as an account executive. Um, and that was just the full agency sort of experience.
And was that what you expected it to be? Like you're talking to agencies and dealing with your internal staff about
Yeah, a little
things?
bit.
Yeah. Did you quit smoking at this time?
Yes.
Sorry. Sorry to ask that question. I was just joking.
Yes.
Okay.
No, actually, like, it's kind of like one of those things where, like, oh, okay, like, I'm happy at my job, like, I'm not stressed all the time. Yeah. Um, I mean, it was definitely like, I found myself, like, sometimes in the conference room in this, like, swanky, super awesome office in the middle of downtown Austin. Because, like, the old Springbox office used to be right across the street from the Paramount. So it was, like, just this beautiful office. And I
Yeah.
would find myself, like, in one of the meetings, just kind of looking around me and just being like, can I, like, pinch myself? I can't believe that, like, I'm doing this.
Yeah. That's a beautiful part of downtown Austin. Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently, like, one of our conference rooms was called Knoxville because apparently when they were shooting the Jackass movie or some movie, I don't know, Johnny Knoxville stayed. Um, like, it used to be like a loft, and he stayed there.
Mm.
So it was like infamous.
If you say so. Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. So Springbox, and so that's pretty awesome. That's a nice, like, organic transition from there. So, and then how long? And you're not at Springbox right now. So, like, how, like,
Oh, yeah.
so when did you transition? Like, when was your next?
So, and I hate to say it, but, like, after a year,
Yeah,
I
really.
moved. And I, like, it's almost like this pattern that, like, honestly was inadvertent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm the type of person that, like, if I find a place and I love it, like, I'm just gonna stay there.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, like, what happened, like, about 3 months into my job there, the owners decided to sell the agency. So for a while, my job was uncertain. So in that meantime, close to the time when, like, they had a deadline by the time that they had to sell the agency, like, for sure. So I ended up talking to Four Kitchens, which is also another sort of digital agency in town. And they had a position open, and I already sort of had a relationship with them because I had applied for a job earlier and made top two and not get it, but they liked me, they remembered me, and I ended up bumping into who later became my boss at a Refresh Austin Austin Web Bash Christmas party. And he was like, "Hey, we're gonna be hiring in a few months. Are you available?" And I was like, "I might just be because I don't know what the deal is with this sale." And it just kind of worked out. I went over there.
Cool. Yeah, and then Refresh Austin is like the biggest refresh I've ever attended. It's also the biggest one
Yeah.
monthly. It's also like every regularly monthly. Just not, I won't say generic, but just general. But it's like you have talks with developers and designers almost each month. But it's also like the most well attended one each month. And then I'm pretty sure like there are other refreshes that are bigger, but none is cooler. And then also the refresh bash, the Christmas bash or the holiday bash, whatever, is probably like I don't know. It's like one of the most nice, cool things I've seen the tech community ever do. I think that's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of work to organize all that stuff like that too. But like all the meetups in town, you guys try to coordinate one day or in December and just try to get everyone together. And it's pretty cool. And also make donations to charity.
Yeah,
That.
that's something that started. It was actually to give credit where credit is due. The first sort of joint holiday party was between Refresh Austin and Austin on Rails. And bringing in canned food was Damon's idea. Damon runs Austin on Rails here in Austin,
Damon is
playing sales. Yeah.
yeah.
So that was his idea, and then the next year we decided to partner with the WordPress meetup here in town. I don't know, is it Austin WordPress or
Yeah, that's
WordPress ATX?
WordPress Austin is fine, or ATX.
Yeah.
WP8.
So anyway, the Austin WordPress, and we partnered with them, and then that was all before my time. When I started organizing Refresh Austin, that was like when we decided to do like a bigger outreach to all the meetups, and we ended up getting like, I don't know, 13 meetups or something, and then the next year it was like 23, and then the next year it was like way like so many more. So it's been like snowballing since then. But that idea of like, let's try to do something for charity, that kind of started with Damon at Austin on Rails.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's like 1 year it was like bring canned foods. And then the next
And
year
that
it's
was such
like,
a mess.
no, we're not doing that again. We have to so much
Oh
so many
yeah.
cans that we can't do it again.
And especially when it was just 3 meetups, it was doable.
Yeah.
But then, like, that was the year where, like, it exploded.
Yeah.
So it was, like, this huge line to try to get in. And it was because we were all, like, trying to get all the cans and, like, put them up. And yeah, it was after that, it was just like, you can prepay, you can pre-donate, or you can donate at the door.
Right. So, cool. So, yeah, so anyway, so definitely if you're in town for Austin, definitely check out Refresh. But just to get back to Four Kitchens, so that's when I first met you. We were working at Four
Yeah.
Kitchens, and how was that like?
I loved it. I worked there for 3 years, and I, again, kind of did everything under the sun almost. I was hired to do sort of like community management at first, because one of the tenets of Four Kitchens is like open source contributions. So they're very big on contributing back to open source, whether that's code or whether that's like thought leadership or, putting together events or speaking at events. That is like the community aspect is very important to the company. So I started off just sort of like doing community management for them, / office manager, because that's what they were really hiring for. But it was like, okay, this is what we're really hiring for, but we want you for all of these other things. So can you do both? And I was like, yes. And that sort of like community management aspect grew into more of a like marketing director role. So I just started doing a lot of like, first of all, like coming up with like a marketing plan of like, how do we market the company? What do we want to do, not just this year, but where do we want to be in like 5 years? Because that's going to dictate like how you market yourself, what you talk about, things like that. So I started doing all of that, and that bled into eventually, after a few years, into business development. So everything that I was doing for marketing grew the demand for the company. Then all of a sudden I was writing proposals, I was flying to meet with clients, I was doing pitches. So it was kind of a weird progression. But yeah, I got to do all of that, and a lot of that is because it was a fairly small company at the time, so you were sort of free to like explore where you wanted to go, and like my specific role kind of had that progression.
So where did you want to go?
I don't know. I was just kind of doing what needed to be done. And that's kind of what guided me. And to be fair, by that time I was feeling a little bit like, this is not really what I want to be doing with my life.
Oh, really?
That sounds so sad. But it was just like, sometimes your job, like you can be really good at something and it pulls you away from what you really want to do.
Okay.
That's kind of what happened.
So, yeah. So let's explore that. That's really what I want to go to. So
Yeah.
So you're marketing. You've pretty much just you've been a manager for managing expectations, managing agencies, managing web teams. So you've been managing a lot of things, and so now you discover that's not what you want to do. And so what was that like? Like, what was that discovery like?
So since I started like my career in tech, I was like doing actually building things. But I just kind of fell into this like social media position, which grew into marketing, or grew into managing clients, and grew into all of these other things that I never really intended to go that way. It just sort of like happened, and I went with it. And really, what I always wanted to do was make things. Um, like just that's the reason I even went to film school or whatever, to learn how to make media. And I that was a huge thing that was missing in my life, was just making things. And I was just talking about making things. And that, yeah, that was definitely not where I wanted to just do, and day in and day out. I wanted to produce content and just, yeah, have more like that sense of accomplishment when you can actually like finish something.
Right.
Was kind of, that was a little bit lost, because when you're doing marketing, even though you may be done with an event or you may be done with a campaign, okay, what's next? You don't like, that sense of I finished this is so fleeting
Mm.
that it just never feels like you're done.
Yeah, it's sort of like a hamster wheel. Like you're always on the hamster wheel, just keep on going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, I feel it's like, well, it's kind of weird because like with web projects, they're never really done either.
Yeah.
So I'm not. So it's kind of like I don't know. I'm not really sure. I see the difference. I guess I can see with managing projects, I can see like, okay, I'm done with this, but then are you just looking for a different type of project? Is that it? Like building something different? Is that the idea?
Yeah, mostly like, for example, that sense of accomplishment when you finish a feature.
Mm-hmm.
um it's like, ah, okay, this is done. And I can take this ticket in Jira and put it in the done column, and it feels so good. That is the sort of like accomplishment, like doneness, that like was kind of missing
Okay.
from my sort of, I guess, work.
Right. Yeah, because like with dealing with management and clients, it's like it's a slow burn, right? I always feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's like if I need to, it is a slow. It's dealing with people is not dealing with people. It's managing people or building consensus, if you will. Is probably a better word.
Yeah.
Is a slow burn. Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
slow process, and you have to get consensus like that. And so yeah, I definitely see that. Where it's like if you're building something, you're just like it's you and the keyboard
Mm-hmm.
and how much fossil fuels
Yep.
power your laptop, and the internet before you can get done. So
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So how did you realize that? Like I mean, you talked about like you realized that that's what you want to do, but like I mean, because like your whole entire I just I don't want to dwell too much, but I just want to see if there was there some moment you're like, oh, it just snapped, or like or just you just
Yeah.
figured out like you just dawned on you like, well, like did it dawn on you, or it just come like
There was totally a moment. I was at a conference, and I was leading a roundtable of other marketing executives like myself. And there was a guy, and at the time, my title was director of marketing. And I was sitting next to a guy from like a competing agency, and his title was VP of marketing. So like instantly, I'm like, oh, that's the next step for me. And like just the way he talked about his job, and like, oh yeah, he was like throwing around all of these figures and throwing around all of these like name dropping clients, and like all of this like like sales terminology, very like salesy terminology, that just kind of made me it just kind of made me feel like, ugh, is that next? Because I that's not what I want.
mm,
And like at that time, even though I was leading a round table, I was like, do not want.
mm,
This is not where I want to go.
okay.
Um, so that was like my moment.
Yeah, because it's never. I had a similar moment when I was an editor at my local newspaper, but I was editor of the TV um, weekly edition, right? So like you get your newspaper on Sunday, um, which was a big deal for me because I love TV growing up, but like you become a student in high school, like whatever. and whatever. And so I became an editor of my homeschool news, not my home, like my hometown newspaper before I was 21. I was like, oh, that's awesome, like it's so cool, but it's the TV journal, and I was really excited about it. And then because I was in charge of the layout, in charge of what articles we put into it, making sure everything else, all the TV schedules were done and printed on time so it could go in the Sunday edition. And then so some guy comes up to my desk, and the other cool thing was like it was mostly my domain. Like no one was like really told me what to do. I just had to make sure everything gets done. And so some guy comes up to me, he's like, "Oh, so do you like TV?" I was like, "No, I don't." I just like editing and managing this project.
Yeah.
It's like I really don't know what's next after this, but I know it's not TV. So yeah, but yeah, it's like it's like that's the moment I was like, no, I really don't want to be here anymore. But, cool. But I did like the job. Anyone who's listening from my hometown, but cool. So what'd you do after that? After you realized that's not what you wanted to do?
So concurrently, while I was doing all this marketing stuff, I was helping out with the local chapter of Girl Develop It. While I was doing marketing for my day job, I still kept up with my HTML and CSS and responsive web design and all that stuff. So I was sort of like teaching on the weekends, teaching things like HTML and CSS or teaching intro to responsive design. And that's kind of where I felt I was getting the most fulfillment. And that's kind of when I realized that that's what I would much rather be doing. Like I had spent too much time on the fringes of tech, talking about like features, talking about like what we're gonna do, what we're gonna build, never getting to build it. And I kind of realized that that's what I wanted to do. And by this point, I had been working for about 6 years in tech. And part of my job, once I was doing like director of marketing stuff in business development, was putting together like strategy plans for clients. So I would get to meet with client X, and then I would put together a plan of like what we would build for them, and like solving sort of that Lego problem, putting together like this like idea of like what's the website gonna do. That's also something where I got a lot of fulfillment, figuring out like how to solve the problem for the client. But again, I didn't get to build it. So I kind of knew like I had a lot of experience on like how to solve problems. I was just missing the actual doing it part.
Yeah, the how to.
Yeah. So I decided that like, okay, I definitely want to be a developer now, and actually get to work on solving the problems that I always talk about. And I started taking part-time online classes to learn JavaScript.
So where'd you go for learning?
Yeah, there's a program called Thinkful. That's thinkful.com.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like this mini online web development school that you sort of do at your own pace. And I did their front-end development program, even though like the HTML and CSS I already knew. I was doing it for the JavaScript. But because it's like, go at your own pace, I flew through the first portion and then like got to the JavaScript part. And it was a 3-month program, and it was supposed like you do it at your own pace. So I could do it in the evenings after I got off work, and it was something like at the time it was like $300 a month, and the program was supposed to. It was like take as long as you want, but you'll be done in 3 months.
Right.
And I was on in 4 because just the context switching between like your day job and then going to try to learn something at night, like it can be a little bit just
it's demanding.
Hard. Yeah, sometimes like your brain, like I remember I would like try to read through an assignment and just my brain was just not absorbing it. Yeah, so So I did that, and then after that, I realized like, yeah, I really can't do the part-time stuff. I could do it, but it's gonna be much slower.
Hmm.
I really wanted to just dedicate the time to learning the skills that I was missing, which for me were back-end skills. So I realized I had enough saved up to live for a few months, and I quit my job, went to the iron yard, and did their Rails engineering program.
Okay.
Learned me some back end stuff, and now uh, yeah, my title is assistant or associate software engineer, and I'm like, engineer? I don't really. That's my title. Okay.
Yeah. So why Rails? Why not?
Um, I the community for me is really important. So when I was working at Four Kitchens, we were doing PHP and Drupal.
Hmm.
So I was part of that community, and I enjoyed the community aspect.
Hmm.
Made a lot of friends in that community
Hmm.
and loved it. But personally, I wasn't really interested in doing that sort of development. I it's not that I wasn't interested in it. It's just that I wanted to learn something else because I had been doing that for 3 years. Like I was in that space for 3 years, and I was like, I kind of want to learn something else. Kind of like, I don't know, just to have something different under my belt. Um, and I was interested in Ruby.
Okay.
I did a little bit of research, and I felt like this. I like this language. It's very readable. Um, and I decided to go to Keep Ruby Weird, which is a conference here in Austin. And I went there not knowing absolutely a lick of Ruby.
Hmm.
I was just like, I'm just gonna go there and see if I like it, and I absolutely loved it.
Oh yeah. What do you love
I
about it?
I love the community.
Oh
Just
yeah.
it's like seriously, it's just one of the most amazing, just friendly, funny communities. So, for example, one of the maintainers of Rails, his name is Aaron Patterson. He's kind of a big deal in the world of Rails. And obviously, here I was attending this Ruby conference, not obviously not knowing who he is and not knowing anybody in the community, and he gets up there and gives a keynote with like this like lab coat and this like mullet wig, and he's just essentially his whole talk is about his cats. And it was the most amazing thing.
Hmm.
And I was just like, I want to be a part of this community. Like everybody knows his cats, and it's a thing, and there's like all these jokes, and like I don't know, there was something about it that I found really just welcoming, and I just wanted to be a part of it. So um, that's I don't know, that finding the right community was important for me, and I felt like I had found that in the Ruby community.
Hmm. Nice. Well, community is important. The
Yeah.
culture is important too. Cool. So, um, you went through the course to learn Ruby on Rails, and how was that like? What was that like? Like what type of shift? Like how was that from going from working to being a student full time again?
Oh. um, it was interesting because at first, the first week, I pretty much treated it like a job.
Yeah.
I was like, got in there, did my coding, and again, the first week was all HTML and CSS. So I was just like, blowing through it, helping other people. Like this is been doing this for 10 years, but 10 years or
Hmm.
longer by that time. Um, so I was a little bit like kind of treating it like a job, and but then once we started like actually like learning Ruby, and learning all like everything that constitutes being a back-end developer, like learning all about databases and database design, and learning about like um, programming principles and all of that stuff, all of a sudden I was like, whoa. It was like student mode kind of like popped in, and all of a sudden it was just kind of, I became a sponge, and I just tried to absorb as much as I could.
Yeah. So like yeah. So student mode just meant like stay up late eating pizza, or was that
Yeah, We will, and it's also the Iron Yard is here in Austin. It's located in a sort of like a complex where there's a restaurant called Opal Divines, which is like a kind of like a diner, and we would go there all the time.
Yeah.
But again, like I was living off of my savings, so and I didn't want my savings to run out, so I was kind of back at like being a scrappy college student. So I would like, okay, what's the cheapest thing I can get on the menu? Nachos for like $6. Okay. And then if I go there on this time, I can get like a $2 beer. So I can like get nachos and a $2 beer and it's $8 and plus tip. Golden.
So,
Yeah.
so you were a student, pretty much. So, okay. Cool.
Yeah, I pretty much reverted to like being, in that sort of like starving college student mode.
Yeah. Cool. And then, you said that you had a job right after uh, media manager, like media, uh, like your undergraduate. So how was finding a job after the Ruby? Well, like I don't like let's not talk about that just yet. Like, so what type of projects did you work on while you were in learning Ruby? Like what else?
We did a ton of to-do lists
Okay.
because like for some reason like teachers love to-do lists because I mean it's like it teaches you like what's called a CRUD operation, create, read, update, delete, right? So they there was a week where we had to do like three different to-do lists, but like each one was like using like a different sort of principle. Like for I think the first one was like, okay, you're reading off of a CSV. Oh no, the first one was like it's a to-do list on just completely on the command line, and then the second one was like this one is a to-do list on a Rails app, but you're reading off of CSV, and then the third one was like, okay, now this is a to-do list on a Rails app, but with a database. So it was a little silly. We did a lot of games. Like for example, when we first started, we were doing like a Ruby-based tic-tac-toe. We did a Ruby-based blackjack, which was like the hardest project that I did that I actually didn't even finish. But it was just one of those things where like it's okay if you don't finish, just give us what you have and we'll talk through it. We'll like we'll get you going again, and as long as you putting in the work and you once we go through the solution together, like making sure that you go back and can show that you understand the concepts and stuff. So like
Right.
yeah, that darn blackjack project I did not finish. But yeah, it's kind of stuff like that.
Cool. And then, so those are some of the projects you did. So how was finding a job after that, after going through the courses?
I
So I
mean,
understand just so people know, like, so you went to the school, learn Ruby on Rails, and it was like a 9-month course or
yeah,
6-month
it's a
course,
12-week.
12
12-week.
week course.
Yeah, I
So,
know.
so that's 3 months, right? So boot camp, if you will.
Yeah.
And so after 3 months, like, what did you do? Like were you looking for work? Were you looking to
Oh, absolutely.
supplement Ruby or knowledge or?
It was interesting how much like freelance work just like floated my way.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't even looking for it, and I still had some savings left over, so I wasn't like in a rush to get a new job. But I was a little bit like, I can't do freelance and apply for jobs at the same time because when you're applying for jobs as a developer, you're doing all these code challenges, and they really do take hours. So like I would be like, okay, I'm working on this code challenge for this job, and I'm working on this other code challenge for this other job, and doing freelance on top of that, I was like, no. I did end up getting like a marketing freelance client where I was doing some like marketing and technical writing for them, and that worked out really well because all of a sudden I had like all this knowledge that was very technical, and I was able to help out with their needs.
Yeah.
But it was a little bit of like a change of pace from like the coding that I was doing, for all the code challenges and stuff. So like I would say like that was the biggest difference. Like when I first graduated college and I was looking for a job, it was pretty much like I don't know, it's just you send in your resume and then hope that they call you.
Yeah.
And now as a developer, it's like you send in your resume and then you do a call and then you do a code challenge and then you go whiteboarding and then like there's like all of these other hoops that you gotta jump.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really weird. It's kind of interesting. Like, you know, as an intern, it's like they just want you to do, or a production assistant, they just need
Yeah.
a warm body, just like, hey, you do
Mm-hmm.
this. And so, but with our industry, it's like you could say you know how to code, but then they have to like prove that you know how to code, and so you have to like walk in there and make sure you do it. So how were those like the white? What is
Oh
a
yeah.
whiteboard? Because I've heard different types of whiteboard. What was your experience with the whiteboard?
It was terrible. I
Yeah.
think that we should, as a um, as an industry, we should do without it. Just do away with it completely because that's not how you code. I feel like, to me at least, coding is like, I don't know, like I think that your brain gets used to a certain environment, and that environment sort of reinforces what you're doing, and it gets the right parts of your brain lit up. So I was actually listening to a podcast. I don't remember which one because I listened to so freaking many. I think it was Invisibilia, and they were doing on NPR. They were doing a study on, like, what makes people, like, can you make someone feel smarter?
Mhm.
And they gave people lab coats.
Hello. Uh-oh, I think we lost you. Call right there. Okay. Set the
All right.
recorder. Okay. There you go.
All right. So Invisibilia did a study
Well, you came back
of.
up 1 second. You said like how make people smarter. Just want to start from that point on. It's just why are we talking about invisibility? Yeah. I just.
Oh yeah, because
Oh, and can you turn
so
your
it's
camera
like a
back
lot
on?
of it is your environment.
Oh, sorry. Can you turn your camera on?
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
So like I feel like a lot of that is your environment.
Mhm.
So for example, telling people, "Hey, this is a doctor's coat," made them perform tasks at a, I don't know, faster, more efficient, smarter way. Like it made them sort of like act smarter. And when they told people this is a painter's coat, they didn't see the same results.
Oh wow.
So again, I feel like a lot of it is like like it's dependent on the circumstances. So when you're coding, you're used to a certain sort of environment. You're used to being on your computer, this dark screen that's very fit for reading code and writing code, and you know that you have the knowledge of the world at your fingertips,
Mhm.
right? You can Google pretty much anything you want, and like that's how you code,
Right. Yeah. I mean,
and it's not a whiteboard.
right.
And
Yeah.
being like, yeah, I feel like all of a sudden being in that situation where you're looking at a whiteboard with a dry erase marker
Uh,
and you have to solve a problem. I feel like I don't know if it happens to everybody, but at least for me, the same parts of my brain that light up when I'm like coding
mhm.
in my environment, they're not there when I'm whiteboarding.
Yeah.
It's so completely disconcerting.
Yeah. It just definitely it takes you out of the loop for it because I don't think I know many people who uh, they they have this meta conversations with other people about how they code. They have conversations about like problems that they're running into or kind of funky things, but like not in terms of like starting from point A to point B,
Hmm.
trying to solve all the whole entire problem set. It's really weird. So like if you want to talk about like annoying problems that you're having coding, that might be one thing, but just not being able to like have Google, you know, while
Yeah,
you're trying to look
exactly.
up something like that. So yeah, and one of the things you don't want to do is like you don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? So you go try to
Yeah.
find solutions.
And even pair programming, like, I mean, do you ever find yourself just not knowing how to type when someone's watching you? Like, happens to me all the time, and I'm like, I swear I know how to type.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So,
it's that halo effect, right? And like
uh huh.
it's different when people are watching rather than.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've yeah those. I've done the first time I did a whiteboard interview. the first time I did a whole like interview process for a programming job, I actually converted it into a talk that I gave for like 2 years
Hmm.
because the experience was like so like what it was just like
Yeah.
so not what we're used to. So, but cool. All right, so yeah, so well that's so hopefully this podcast will change how our industry works.
I hope so.
Yeah, from this point on, that's how it works on. Cool. So, so how are you? I'm not gonna put you under pressure. I'm not gonna ask you how you like your job right now, but are you happy with the process, the metamorphosis from
Yeah,
management to coding?
absolutely. You know, I actually want to do a talk about this because I feel like sometimes when you're doing the wrong job, you can be really unhappy and not even realize it.
Yeah.
So for even though I loved working at Four Kitchens and I loved everybody that I worked with, it wasn't the right type of work for me. So I was becoming more and more depressed
Mm.
and just stressed out and, you know, suffered from anxiety.
Yeah.
I had to start seeing a therapist to like try to manage all of that.
Oh, wow.
And then I realized like I'm doing the wrong thing for me.
Mm.
Because really like I feel like the right type of job for you depends on whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, how you sort of like charge your just charge your batteries, I guess. And for me, um, putting on the event person face, the client facing face, like putting that on was very taxing. So I was completely shutting down in my personal life because I spent all of my people energy like doing my job, like because it was my job to be a people person. I'm a people person, like an office space. Um, but I was spending all of my energy doing that. So in my personal life, I was completely shutting down, not doing anything, not talking to my friends, not you're barely talking to my partner. Um, and as soon as I made this change, where like this change is right for me because I think that it gives me the right balance between like time on my own because I get to code and listen to some music while I do it and solve problems and like all of that stuff doesn't drain my battery in the way that all the client facing stuff did. So now I'm much, much happier in my personal life because my day job is not completely draining me. And now I'm, back to talking to friends and, being more social and have a better relationship with my partner and all of that stuff. And I feel like a lot of that is just like realizing, are you doing the right job for you and your personality type?
That's very interesting. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And but yeah, I think one thing I will say, like I've only been to like a couple of your events that you put on during Four Kitchens, and I love them both. So, but
Sometimes and I loved putting them on
yeah,
and all of that. Like I really did. It's just like when you're an introvert, and that's not to say that like, oh my god, if you see me out in the street, don't talk to me. Like that's totally not it. But like when you're an introvert, you sort of like it's almost like when you're getting ready for like you're gonna go to a buffet, so you don't eat, so you can eat more. When you're an introvert, you kind of plan out like, okay, I know I'm gonna be at an event, so I'm gonna take it easy in the days leading up to it, so that I can have the energy to deal with that. So, and when you do it all the time, then yeah, there's
you're get freaked out. And you're like, oh my gosh.
yeah, and it's not that I don't enjoy it. It's just that I didn't have the time to turn it off.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and recharge is very important.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking about your career journey. I was really interested in that. It seems like it's been a great change for you. It's been awesome. So I'm glad about that because like I just feel like it was interesting to hear someone go from management to coding.
Yeah, especially now, my last title was, director of marketing, and now I'm an associate engineer.
Yeah.
Definitely like, whoops. But yeah, I love it. I love the work that I do now, and yeah, I definitely feel like sometimes you just gotta reset.
Yeah. Cool. That's that's a. I don't think that's a great way to stop the show on that reset button. Cool. How
Right.
can people find you on the internet? And
Sure, I am on Twitter at Cecy Correa, CecyCorrea, and that's mostly where I do all my outreach into the world. I do have a blog over at cecycorrea.com, but haven't blogged in a while, so I'm sorry about that.
that's okay. That's okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. Cool.
Bye.
Oops.